Alexis. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Just again, a quick introduction for myself. I'm Yoji Shimizu. I'm a mentor with Team 1816, the Green Machine. I'm also a volunteer with First Robotics. I have served as Master of Ceremonies for regional events as well as the National Championship event since like 2011, I think. And I'm also on the First in the Upper Midwest Board of Directors. So this presentation is really going to be about the competitions and about the regional events and kind of introduce or reintroduce, I guess, regionals to everybody because it's been a while. So, you know, the last regional event in our part of the country was, when was that? It was the Duluth events, right, in March of 2020. So literally about 4 days before the country shut down with the pandemic. So it was literally that weekend before. And unfortunately, actually, a lot of teams did not get to compete in 2020 because the Minneapolis events that were supposed to happen in April were canceled. And of course, last year, we didn't have any events at all, so in-person events. So we're all kind of getting used to this again and trying to figure out kind of how this is going to happen moving forward. And we have a lot of students and mentors and teams where many of the students and many of the mentors have probably never been to a regional event and been to a competition. So this is kind of an opportunity to kind of just tell you at least the way these regionals kind of work, at least the way they worked in 2020 and 2019, under the assumption right now that that will also be kind of the way the competitions will work in 2022. And that's certainly I think our hope. So I'm going to share my screen again and just kind of take you through this. Hopefully you can see this. So, you know, again, today, talk a little bit of kind of like the way in which teams kind of approach competition events, tell you about kind of the way the agenda is kind of set up, introduce you to some of the key volunteers, talk about this process of alliance selection and kind of how the finals work and how, you know, a champion is identified, things like that, the various awards that are given to teams at regional competitions, how you qualify for the FRC championship, and also in the state of Minnesota, how you might qualify for the MSHSL state robotics championship, and maybe some advice for rookies. And again, just the key thing here is that we're going to talk about things that happened in 2019 and 2020. We're hoping that it will be a similar kind of format, but there may be changes as a result of kind of the ongoing pandemic. But we'll tell you kind of what we hope will happen, I think, at the 2022 competitions. So we can start with sort of like this question about, you know, what is a team kind of, what are they kind of hoping to accomplish when they go to a competition, right? And I think actually this is not the same answer for each and every team. And so this is kind of an interesting question to just kind of ponder in terms of you've got, you know, 40, 50, 60 teams coming together to compete at an FRC regional event. What are the team's kind of goals? Like what's a kind of team goal that's really critical? And I ask you if you're comfortable kind of sharing. We know we've got a rookie team here and it looks like a veteran team mentor as well and some students. Like what's your goal when you go to a competition? What do you hope to achieve?
I would say that my rookie goal right now is to show these students that there's so many more options out there and that they can actually do something incredible that they'll remember the rest of their life and may even, you know, go into that career, may even go into those hobbies or interests, or may become a coach.
Sure, absolutely. So that inspiration piece is really a key goal for many teams when they go to compete, bring their robot out there. Great goal. What else? Okay, TJ says to do our best and have a memorable experience. Yeah, good. Absolutely. So what would be a memorable experience at a competition? for Team 2052, for example? It looks like you're part of Nightcrawler. How is that defined for you as a team? Any thoughts?
Maybe just being able to complete the task, or
Sure.
coming with the goal of if an obstacle comes up, being able to fix it on the fly is
Right.
probably got to be kind of an exhilarating experience. And know,
Exactly.
like, we got this, we figured it out.
Yeah, that's a good goal. We've seen teams, for example, that have struggled throughout the entire competition, kind of getting their robot to do what they wanted it to do. And it took maybe half of the competition before they actually got it figured out. But once they got it figured out, you can just see so much joy on their faces in terms of like, this is working, and we worked through this problem, and we accomplished something. So yeah, definitely, that's the goal. Emily says, have fun and work together. Absolutely. Yeah, that's key. Yeah, for sure. Right. So one of the things you notice in all of these responses is that winning is not necessarily a goal for many teams, right? Even though it is a competition and there will be a champion at the end, winning is not necessarily the end all and be all of the experience, right? But again, every team will have a different goal. And certainly for some teams, it'll be doing well in the competition will be a key goal for them. And that's completely reasonable for a competitive kind of sporting event, right? So, but winning can be defined in lots of different ways, I think, in FIRST Robotics. It's not just kind of winning the championship or winning the finals and getting a medal and things like that. It could be maybe winning an award, for example, that maybe isn't necessarily related to the competition. Winning for many teams is actually what Emily described, kind of having fun and working together. Winning is often making sure that other teams are doing well and having a really great experience. So one of the things I think, Teresa, that I hope you will see as a rookie team is that you will have lots of other teams that will be reaching out to you and your students to make sure that your team has the very best experience possible, because every team knows what it's like to be a rookie and how challenging that can be. And so you will get lots of help and lots of assistance if you would like to have it. Other teams are like, we just want to kind of do well enough to kind of make it to the finals, or we want to be an alliance captain, or we want to, there are lots of different ways to define a memorable experience and what that's going to mean to you. So it's just important to remember, it's not all about winning. that is like maybe the kind of key message overall for the competition experience. It's much more than that, and so that's really key, right? So, what does the competition actually look like? What are you kind of getting yourself into when you go to one of these things? So, this is actually from 2015. It's author Paul Smith, who is kind of a leadership kind of expert, and apparently his son participated in FIRST Robotics back in 2015. So he went to a competition and he wrote about it in his blog. And this quote here is from his blog, which basically said the tournament itself was like a combination sporting event, dance contest, NASCAR pit crew competition, costume party, and rock concert all in one. I think that's actually a fairly accurate representation of what a FIRST Robotics regional event is like. It's this mashup of all of these different kinds of things. A sporting event, there's a lot of dancing that's going on. You see students in costumes and uniforms. The pit crew thing, which I'll talk about in a minute, is that each team has its own space to kind of work on their robot. And that's basically like a pit, for a NASCAR competition. They're working on their machine, trying to fix it, trying to make sure it's optimized well. And then there's tons of music happening all the time. And so that's a really nice way to kind of think about what these competition events are like. The other important thing, again, is just to remember that the way FIRST Robotics kind of structures the competitions, they really are designed to create what I call win-win scenarios, right? It's not like one team wins and another team necessarily loses. It's sort of designed in a way in which the competition is structured so that teams are looking out for other teams and trying to make sure that other teams do well. And the way that's done is essentially that it's not one team versus another team. It's always alliances of 3 teams versus alliances of another 3 teams. And the way the competition is set up, you will be a partner with a team in one match, and you will be competing against that same team in another match, right? So it's really not beneficial to your team to necessarily not help the other teams do well, because you're shooting yourself in the foot when you do that kind of thing in this kind of competition format where you don't know who your partners are going to be until you get there. So it's in your best interest as a team, if you want to do well and you want to inspire others and you want to have fun, is to help every team be as good as they can be at the competition. So, again, it's always what they call a blue alliance and a red alliance, 3 teams that are kind of randomly put together during the course of the competition. And then the next match, you have another 2 teams that you're going to work with. And so hopefully everybody kind of gets something out of this experience. And so at the end, it's not necessarily one winner, it's a group of 3 teams that kind of work together to be the finalists or the champions of a given regional event. So that's a very important concept in FIRST Robotics, I think, that allows for this kind of inspiration, this fun, to have a memorable experience, regardless of how well you do actually on the competition field, right? So in Minnesota, we typically have pretty large events. So we typically will have 55 or 60 teams at a given competition. And there will be a large kind of round robin set of what we call qualification matches through 75% of the actual regional competition itself. And in general, each team will have somewhere between 8, 9, or 10 unique matches per team during these so-called qualification rounds. So you'll have a minimum of that number of matches for each team. And then based on how teams perform in the qualification matches, there will be a selection of alliances. At the end, those alliances basically stay together, and there's a playoff round that occurs that allows for a more conventional kind of competition where the winner moves on, and ultimately you end up with a champion alliance at the end. Right, so this is an example of kind of what they call a qualification match schedule, and you'll see there's always a blue alliance and a red alliance, 3 teams in each alliance. These are team numbers. So at the time you end up showing up at an event, you will get this qualification match schedule, so you know which matches you'll be in. And the other thing about this is that this is a little bit of a show. It's a little bit of an event. Again, it's designed to kind of, inspire people who are in the audience kind of watching this, right? So it's in addition to it's a competition, I think it's also a little bit of kind of an event and something that has a schedule and has sort of a cadence to it. And so that's often dictated by something that the volunteers on the field call cycle time. So you'll see this in the qualification match schedule. There'll be a time listed, like 8:30 is when this first match is supposed to begin. And then 8:38 is when the second match is supposed to begin. And the difference between those 2 times, this is 8 minutes, that's what's referred to, at least for the volunteers that are working on the field, as a cycle time. So we're aiming to have these matches stay to this schedule as much as possible. Now, you'll often see in many regional events, particularly the ones in Duluth where it's happening early in the season, the cycle times will be long at the beginning and they'll be shorter as the event goes on. And the reason for that is like everybody isn't ready yet to kind of do this. And so they need more time. We're trying to give more time to teams to kind of make sure their robot is working well. These times are important, but they're not the driver. The driver basically is making sure we do everything possible to make sure that your robot is working when the match begins. So even if that means that we take longer than what's shown on the schedule, we always err on that because we always want to make sure that the teams have the very best experience possible. And that means making sure that we do everything we can to make sure that your robot is working in the way that you want it to work when you are out there on the field, right? But you do have a little bit of this kind of time pressure that is often there in terms of the volunteers kind of working to try and make sure we keep the schedule as much as is technically feasible and possible. Now, every game is different. This is this year's game, which we've been playing for a while now, called Infinite Recharge. And every game will have a very complicated kind of scoring matrix that will determine kind of what the robot will be trying to do. And so there are points assigned to different kinds of actions that the robot can do. But the key thing about this for the qualification rounds is this thing called ranking points. So again, this is designed to kind of help teams focus on kind of completing different tasks. So, if you win the match, you get a certain number of ranking points. It's not really important in this qualification round how many points you score. You just have to score one more point than the other alliance, and you get the ranking points. If it's a tie score, you get another ranking point. And then there's certain things that robots can do that will give you some additional, what we call ranking points. And those are typically more complicated kind of activities that usually require cooperation between the different teams on your alliance. And it's these ranking points that kind of determine where you rank in the qualification rounds, and will determine kind of how your position in the overall competition moving forward with what we call the playoff rounds. So every year, this scoring matrix will be a little bit different. So when the game is revealed in early January, a lot of effort will be put into kind of analyzing the scoring and trying to figure out what is required for us to get these ranking points or to do this particular activity. Can we do that? Can we design a robot to do that? Is it worth doing that or going after that particular kind of ranking points? Those are all these design decisions that go into how a team is going to approach this. And for the most part, FIRST does try very, very hard to develop games in which a rookie team can compete and contribute to an alliance, while giving enough challenges to more veteran teams to get them out of their comfort zone and to do something a little bit different in terms of their design. So that's a challenge for every game, but that's really the intent, is to give something that a rookie team can be a valuable contributor to an alliance, but also give something challenging enough for the more veteran teams to get excited about and to do something a little bit different in their design, their robot design. All right, so quickly, here are the kind of the agendas in which a regional is typically set up. These are typically 3-day events that start on Thursday and end of the day on Saturday is typically the schedule. So Wednesday afternoon or evening is when we call load in. This is the time when a small number of team members can bring in their robot. They can bring in the components of their pit. These are these 10 by 10 areas where they have basically can set things up in the way that they like in order for them to be able to work on their robot and meet with other teams and meet with judges. So this is kind of the load-in period that happens the day before. And then the following day on Thursday, those pits are hopefully set up. And this is the day in which everybody is getting ready for the competition. So one of the key things that needs to happen is your robot needs to be inspected. So there are volunteers called robot inspectors that will make sure your robot is meeting the requirements that are outlined in the game manual. So there are certain parameters with regard to size and weight and other kinds of things that need to be met. And the robot inspectors are there to make sure that you are compliant essentially with those parameters for the robot design. And so once your robot is inspected and basically approved, then you can move on to use the robot in your competition. There will also be what's called a driver's meeting. This is the place where the head referee and the field technical advisor will meet with the drive teams to talk about the competition and to provide some help and assistance with regard to things to kind of look out for, how the competition is going to kind of move forward, any things that they should be aware of, making sure they read the game manual. Those kinds of things are all the things that kind of go on at the driver's meeting. And then usually there are opportunities to do some practice matches. So you can spend some time on the field with other teams, driving your robot around, making sure it's working well, thinking about your strategies moving forward to get ready for the actual competition that will start on Friday morning. And sometime during this day on Thursday, your qualification match schedule will be released. So that'll be that spreadsheet or that printout of the different times, all the different matches, and you will be able to find out what matches you are going to be part of and what time those are scheduled to occur, right? So that will allow you to kind of map out your strategy and plan for Friday and Saturday, right? So that's what Thursday is about. Thursday is kind of the prep day, kind of getting everything ready for the big show. And The big show happens on Friday. It starts on Friday morning. Typically, there is a opening ceremony, kind of get the crowd excited. Sometimes often guest speakers or other kinds of things that happen at that opening ceremony to get things ready to go. And then once that opening ceremony is over, then the qualification matches begin. And basically, you know, with 60 teams, I can't remember actually how many qualification matches are. There are a lot of them. And you start Friday morning after the opening ceremony. The rest of the day will basically be spent kind of with the qualification matches, and there will be a break for lunch. And typically at the end of the day, there will be a very brief kind of award ceremony. So some of the awards that are given to teams will be awarded at the end of the day on Friday to kind of conclude the first day of competition at the regional, right? So that's Friday, the opening day. And then the final day is Saturday, typically, and this will be again an opening ceremony, maybe a little bit shorter than the one on Friday. But again, you will have a series of qualification matches. You need to complete the qualification match schedule. That usually takes most of Saturday morning. And Saturday around lunchtime, you will complete all of your qualification matches, and all of these what are called ranking point averages will be calculated, and then there will be a rank list of the teams from 1 to whatever the number is to indicate who did better in the qualification matches than other teams did, right? And it's a ranking list that will be used to determine the next stage, which is what's called alliance selection. So this is the process by which the highest ranked teams will be able to select who they would like to work with in the playoff matches. And in the playoff matches, the alliances are all fixed. So basically, you're choosing partners to work with through the rest of the competition. And you will be competing against other alliances that are also selected to compete in the playoff matches. And there'll be a series of these matches. And at the end, there will be a championship alliance, and then there will be a large award ceremony at the end of the day to give out all these different awards that exist. So so there are sort of 3 basic areas at a competition that I think teams are involved in. They all carry out kind of different things in these different kind of areas. And I'll talk quickly about these 3 different areas and then talk about the alliance selection process. So the first is the pits. This is kind of the NASCAR pit crew competition aspect of the competition. And I will say for many people, this is their favorite part of the event, actually, because every team has got some space to kind of set up their shop. And you will see the teams often have uniforms. They often have signs and banners and other kinds of things that define their space within the competition. And that's where they're working on their robot. That's where they're talking to other teams. That's where they're talking to judges. So this is a great kind of, it's just this big kind of social networking kind of thing that happens at these competitions where people are talking to each other, talking about their robots, trying to strategize, scouting, all these other kinds of things take place in the pits. And so you will see lots and lots of conversations taking place in the pits all the time between team members, also between team members with different teams. All of these things are really part of the process of what happens in the pits. And this is where a lot of the work and the relationship building actually takes place. Figuring out kind of, what is that other team doing? What's their robot kind of like? And is that a robot? Is that a team that we could work with? For example, does the skills of our robot, for example, match what they're trying to do with their robot? Those kinds of things. If you need help with a robot, there's a place where you can go to and say, I need this particular part. And they'll make a big announcement. And basically, you will find multiple teams kind of running to your pit saying, we've got this part, we can help you out. So that's the other thing that kind of happens. There's a lot of what we call cooperation and other kinds of collaboration going on within the pit area. The other thing that happens within the pits, at least pre-COVID, was a lot of judging. So there are volunteers who are in these blue shirts, and they are there to basically talk to teams and basically determine who should be receiving the many different awards that are given out of the competition. So you will often see in the pit is where the judges will go to talk to different teams. Now, I will say in 2022, it's really unclear what the format of judging will be. It's possible that some of the judging, or maybe all of the judging in 2022 will be done virtually, as it has been done over the past couple of years. So still to be determined whether this part of the competition will be the same as it was in 2020 or before. The field is the other major area. This is where the competition field is. The field is typically about 3/4 the size of a basketball court. It's got big lights, sound system, all this other kind of stuff. It's the arena. It's basically the place where the game is played. And so you will see teams, the drive teams, essentially in these competitions or in the field, participating in the actual game itself. And you'll see a lot of this kind of stuff going on, where teams are kind of discussing, okay, we're together in this match. What's our strategy with regard to how are we going to actually play the game and see what we can do. So there's a lot of that kind of discussion that takes place on the field itself. And this is where a lot of different volunteers are there to make sure that the game is running well. And again, the objective is to make sure that every team is doing what they want to be doing on the competition field. Then finally, there's the stands. So this is the audience, everybody who's in the audience. And they're really sort of, I would say, two things going on here. One is there's a lot of what we call scouting. So teams will have specific team members, and these are team members here writing down every aspect of every match. They're watching different teams and their robots, trying to figure out, okay, what can that robot do well? How well is it doing in this particular match? How many things can it do, different aspects of the game? And they're collecting all that information, basically, and putting it together and helping their team figure out, how are we going to move forward? What are the potential partners for us that are going to do well if we decide to work with them in the playoff rounds? So some of them do this by hand with lots of sheets. Others have sophisticated electronic databases set up with iPads and other kinds of things, but it's all designed to gather information. So gathering information from the stands, watching the competition itself, and then also going into the pits and also talking to teams about their approach to the game and what their robots are capable of doing. And of course, the other thing is there's just lots of cheering, there's lots of dancing, there's lots of other kinds of fun stuff that's going on within the stands itself. So that's kind of where a lot of the fun is going on as well. They're usually mascots and other kinds of really fun outfits that teams have to kind of energize their group and keep things exciting. So those are the kind of three areas. Now, the other important thing to remember about regional is that these are all volunteer-driven events. So everybody who's on the field who is kind of helping out with the event is a volunteer. And there are lots of them. Typically at a regional, it takes about 100 to 125 volunteers to run a regional event successfully. And so these include all kinds of different roles. So they include people like helping teams move in and out of the arena, robot inspectors, what we call control system advisors. These are people helping with the programming and the coding and making sure that the robot can communicate effectively with the field system on the field. Safety advisors, judges, other people involved in the pit. We have people making sure that teams know where they need to go and where they need to line up to get ready for a match. And then on the field, there are lots of different volunteers. There are a bunch of referees that make sure that the rules are being followed. The field technical advisor, this is one of the most important volunteers. He's the person that's basically in charge of the field and making sure that every robot can connect to the field system and can work appropriately. There are people that look after the field, make sure it's not broken, or fix things if they need to during the course of the competition, scorekeepers, game announcers, master of ceremonies. These are all these are all the different volunteer positions. The important thing to remember about this is every single volunteer is there to make sure that your team has the very best experience possible. That's the whole objective of each and every volunteer at an event. We want to make sure, as was mentioned before, that you have fun and that you have a memorable experience at the competition. So the volunteers are there to help you as a team. And if you have any questions or you need some help, volunteers are always a good place to go. They will always, always find ways to kind of make sure you get the information that you need and the help that you need if you need it. So that's a key thing as well. The volunteers are really amazing. All right, so let's talk quickly about this whole concept of alliance selection, because this can be a little confusing, particularly if you haven't been to a competition or it's been a while. This is the part that is a little bit stressful and anxiety provoking for a lot of teams, because you're making some really quick decisions on the fly. And basically what happens is at the end of the qualification matches, The teams will be ranked from 1 to say whatever, 50 or 60. And the top 8 teams will basically be serving as what we call alliance captains. So they get the opportunity to choose their partners for the playoff round. So this is an alliance selection, I think, from 2015, I think. And this is, number 8 to 7, 6, 5 down to number 1. And those teams are, those captains, they're all students, are called out onto the field. And then they are allowed to choose their partners for the playoff rounds, essentially. And so that's why the scouting is really important, right? Because the scouting, they've got to have information to figure out, okay, who are they going to choose? And who's going to work well with us, essentially. So I'm going to play you, let's see if I got to change this, screen again. I'm going to play for you the video that's shown at the competition about how this process works. So hopefully you can hear this.
The top 8 teams move into the team captain positions of the playoff alliances. The number 1 team can select any team at the event to join their alliance. If the selected team declines the invitation, then another team is chosen until one accepts. Suppose Alliance 2 selects Alliance 4, but Alliance 4 declines and Alliance 2 selects another team which accepts. It's now Alliance 3's turn, but the same rule applies. Alliance 4 is not available, so Alliance 3 has to select another team from the available pool. And the next alliance can select any available team that hasn't declined an invitation. This process continues through Alliance 8. Notice that a previously unavailable team has become an alliance captain. At this point, any remaining team that has declined an invitation is not eligible to participate in the playoffs because they can't be selected. Alliance 8 now picks their 3rd team member from the remaining available teams. Alliance 7 picks their 3rd team member, and so on, all the way back to the number 1 alliance. All alliances are now full, so alliance selection is complete. But the next several teams need to be prepared to serve as backup teams if one of the selected teams can no longer compete. Listen for an announcement for how many teams will be asked to serve as backups. And be sure to let the head referee know if your team accepts that responsibility. Let's start our alliance selection.
Okay, so that's the process by which this occurs. So, you'll see that there's some method to this madness in terms of the sense that, this whole idea of like, if you are selected, you cannot be selected again by another team is really designed to kind of force teams to make some difficult choices with regard to who they would like to work with. There's a lot of strategy involved in this process, and it's quite complicated, and teams are asked to kind of make these decisions really, really quickly. So usually teams will come in with a very clear idea of who's on their list of teams that they would like to choose, and they have to listen carefully at what other teams are doing in order to figure out, do they need to make some adjustments in their overall approach. But I think the key piece of advice for most teams here is that you should really go into this process assuming that you would be a captain and you would be choosing, because you don't know. If you're not, even if you're not in the top 8, it's possible that if you're within the next 8 teams, you could end up being an alliance captain, and then you'll have to make some choices on your own with your alliance partners. And it's not easy. You've got thousands of people watching you and trying to figure out what your decision is going to be. Some teams are using their cell phones to talk to other people, trying to make these decisions on the fly. Can be really, really stressful. So you need the data basically to kind of help you with making that decision. And again, if you're a newer team and a rookie team, maybe you don't have as many team members as some of the more veteran teams. Many teams are willing to share their data, share their scouting data with other teams. So if you need to do that, that's certainly, it's worth asking and sort of figuring out if there's a way to get some help there. All right. So that's the alliance selection. So once you have that, you have 8 alliances with 3 teams apiece. They all work together through the playoff rounds. And this is, what we're all kind of used to with regard to like the NCAA basketball tournament or something like that. There are the quarterfinals, semifinals, finals. Basically, the first team or alliance to win 2 matches moves on to the next round. And ultimately, you'll get a finalist alliance and 2 finalist alliances. They will compete against each other, and the first alliance to get 2 wins will end up being the champion of the region event. Okay. So that's the end of that's basically the end of the event. And then there's all these awards that are given out. And these awards focus on more than just the robot. So some of them are focused specifically on the robot design, like the Autonomous Award or the Creativity Award or the Innovation and Control Award. But some of the other awards are focused on other aspects of team function and team success, a business plan, gracious professionalism, imagery, team spirit, all these kinds of things. There's recognition of the rookie teams through 2 different awards. And then, of course, the finalists and the winners are selected. And then the 2 most important awards, I won't say important, but the 2 awards that qualify for you for championship are the Engineering Inspiration Award and the Chairman's Award. These are ones where if the team wins, that they automatically qualify for the championship event for FRC. And then there's some individual recognition as well. Students are recognized through what's called the First Dean's List Award, and mentors are recognized through the Woody Flowers Finalist Award. All right. So there are lots of different ways to kind of get recognition at a regional event. Okay, so for this idea of moving on to championship, again, the winning alliance will automatically qualify for championship. The Chairman's Award winner at a regional will automatically qualify, as will the Engineering Inspiration Award winner, as well as the winner of the Rookie All-Star Award. So there will always be, typically there will be a rookie team that will end up qualifying for championship. There's also this thing called wildcards, which is a little complicated to explain, but if you've previously won an award before at another event, you can't basically take up a spot for qualifying for championship at another event. So if you end up winning the alliance or being the winning alliance at a subsequent event, and you are already qualified for championship, they'll find a way to bring another team into qualification for championship. And that's usually someone from the finalist alliance. And again, the First Dean's List Award, which is an individual award, the student and mentor are invited to championship as well. Now, the state high school championship is, these are the qualification standards, I guess, or criteria for the state championship, which is really quite important in Minnesota as of 2019. So it's based on your performance at the first regional competition that you compete at. Some teams only compete at one regional event. Other teams compete at multiple regional events. It's how you do at the first regional event that determines your qualification for the state championship. And it's a points formula based on how you did in the game, awards you win, some consideration of team age, like rookies get a little bit more consideration for qualifying points. And the Chairman's Award winners typically automatically qualify for the state championship. But again, this is all as of 2019, and I think the MSHSL state championship qualification formula hasn't been announced yet for the 2022 champions. All right. So finally, we're doing okay here. Some advice for teams, I guess. So that I've typically seen. So one is, this whole concept of like be mindful about what your goals are and what you are hoping to achieve. It can be really overwhelming at an event to be there. You have all these other teams. Many of the teams have been around for a long time. So just be reasonable, I think, in terms of what you're hoping to achieve. The other important piece of advice is like, do not be afraid to ask for help. That's one of the reasons many teams are there. They want to help other teams be successful. So take advantage of that network, take advantage of that spirit of collaboration. You'll learn a lot. You'll meet new friends. You'll gain new partners and collaborators. But sometimes you just need to ask for help. And so that's just remember that that's okay. That's expected, and you will be rewarded by doing that, right? The other important thing is that inspiration is everywhere at an event like this, right? So you will be inspired by the other teams that you meet, but you will also be inspiring the other teams that you interact with. You will be inspiring the people that are in the audience. There will be lots of younger people visiting the pits and visiting and attending the competition. I can guarantee you those younger kids are going to be inspired by the work that you do and the things that you do at the event. So this whole concept of inspiration is really key to what a regional event is really all about. Enjoy the moment. That's really kind of key. Some of it, you're going to be frustrated. You can maybe like, this is not going the way we expected it was supposed to go. That's okay. I think you're learning through that process, and it will pay off will really pay off as you kind of go through that. So, enjoy the moment, just be prepared to kind of shake things off and go with the flow and do what you can to make it a great experience. And that'll be helpful. It's a lot of dancing. You should be prepared to dance, a lot of music. It's a lot of fun. For rookies, I think the other thing is just don't leave before the award ceremony, because as I mentioned before, there are awards specifically for rookies, and so rookie teams. And it's really disappointing when a rookie team is given an award and they decided to leave a little early because they didn't know that they should stick around for the awards. It's there's usually a lot of recognition for those teams that receive an award, and so we want to be able to celebrate that and recognize every team that gets that recognition. So stick around. It's really important. And again, kind of have fun. That's the key thing more than anything else, which I think was mentioned earlier in this presentation. All right. So again, this is my contact information. I think, Alexis, how are we doing? 4 minutes? I'm going to stop here. I was going to show you a match, but I think we probably are not going to do that. So
we definitely want to make sure people have time for questions.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Any questions? For those who've been in a competition, did I get everything? Is there something that I missed that you remember?
I'm going to say if you're new, I recommend the website thebluealliance.com. If you don't compete in week 1, you can actually watch a competition on that site, but you can watch individual matches from previous years just to get a feel of what things are. And if you are week 1, I think there should be at least a week 0 event like out of New Hampshire that would be aired to get just a general idea of kind of the flow of it and see it, what it's actually like.
Yeah. So, there's typically an off-season, a week 0 event, a couple of week 0 events, right, Michelle? So I think Nightcrawler is typically hosted.
There's at least 1 or 2 broadcasts. I think, like I said, the one in New Hampshire, I think is broadcast, or one out east.
Yeah. And if your team is ready, you can go to an off-season week 0 event here in the Twin Cities. And so Nightcrawler has typically held one. I think Blue Twilight has also hosted a week 0 event. Some teams have access to actual practice fields, and so there might be other opportunities moving forward to have some practice before you actually go to actual competition events. And there may even be discussion of having some week, like off-season, or they're not called off-season, I guess, scrimmages in between competitions. Yeah, in-season scrimmages, I guess, to again give teams more time to practice. So that is a possibility, I think, for the 2022 season. Yeah.
Well, that sounds exciting. And since again, I'm new to all of this, with those alliances, does each team have their robot on the field and everyone's working together, or do the alliances kind of pick which team's robot they want out on the field?
So for the alliances, in the qualification rounds, the robots are brought onto the field, taken off, brought back to the pit. They work on those. There's typically only one competition robot. So there's not like multiple robots that teams are bringing into the competition. So they've built a robot, they've designed it, it's designed to do certain things. That's what they come with. They often will make some pretty significant, they can make modifications during the competition, and that often does happen, either because they want to make the change because they realize that something wasn't working exactly the way they thought, or they need to make the change because something broke, right? And they need to fix it. But you will see a lot of kind of on-the-fly inspiration, I guess. Michelle's kind of laughing because I think her team has done this. I mean, my team has done this as well. Lots of kind of improvising as they get there, and when they figure out, oh, this really didn't work the way we thought it was going to work. Let's change it up and do something different. And they try very hard during the competition to actually make those changes and figure that out. So that's also part of the process and part of what's interesting and fun about it. So
absolutely. Well, Michelle posted the link in chat. We are moving back to the main room just for some closing remarks, handing out those prizes for participants and things like that. So feel free, click that link. You'll exit on out of this room and meet back up with the rest of the group. Thank you so much, Yoji.
Okay, thank you.